How are you today, Peter?
I'm doing well.
Yeah, good day at the show so far.
Fantastic. Lots
Great.
of things going on, especially in the autonomous area. So it's
Yeah,
very exciting.
autonomous network. I've heard that term.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, no, we've heard it quite a bit. What can you tell me about your conversations with CSPs around autonomous networking on the journey?
Sure. So I think everyone is looking at it and trying to understand how can they maximize the impact they can get out of things like agentic AI, all of the buzzwords. I think they've started by looking at very bottom-up type process change. And I think that's got them so far a lot of proof of concepts, a lot of pilots. I think now they're starting to recognize that to really make a big change, they need to take a much more top-down view, where they have to look at the processes more holistically and decide how they can actually drive significant change in their operational model. And that definitely seems to be the message that's coming across from the conversations I'm having and from other people that I'm hearing at the show.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we're not jumping to TM Forum's level 4 autonomy tomorrow.
No,
We're on a journey.
exactly. You've got to get there, but and it is a certain amount of understanding how the technology works, which is what you'd expect. But if you try and just do it as the sort of bottom up, unique, tiny little use cases, it really doesn't make the impact that people are going to expect. You just re-engineer more silos of automation,
Sure.
and it's collapsing those silos, which is going to be where you get the most benefit overall.
Yeah, and so along those benefits, when you're talking with CSPs, are they looking for OpEx reduction, or what are they looking for the autonomy to really drive for them?
I think they're always looking for more revenue if you can drive more revenue, and that usually is a speed to revenue when you're trying to use automation, and that doesn't change when you're using AI. So making it less, trying to make it frictionless through that process, and using AI to make that much easier, I think is a significant step in the right direction.
Yeah.
So using AI as a conversation instead of filling in a form on a website is a really nice example of how you can try and make that a much quicker way of being able to drive new revenue services. Operations, there's always an OpEx pressure. Most operators are spending 2/3 of their money on driving operations in their group. So if anything you can do to simplify that, and the complexity goes up, the cost is going up. So they need to find ways to scale.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you're meeting with customers and talking around, kind of the use cases that are driving autonomous network, what are some of them common use cases that they're looking at?
I think you'll hear the term dark knock or closed loop.
Okay.
That's definitely one of their big focuses.
Yeah.
Just because the operations teams gets very overwhelmed with the amount of activity that's happening out there.
Yeah.
And they know without being able to deal with that volume more efficiently, they're not going to be able to grow. So there's a lot of focus on doing that. And it's an area where there's probably a closer link to the event-driven type activity that they used to in the past. So it's a fairly natural progression.
Sure.
And that's, I think, their first focus area is how they take advantage of this new technology in that space.
Yeah. So kind of leveraging AI and agents in order to, assure the network and take a good view of what's happening in real time, maybe even looking back at what happens to cause an issue, stuff like that.
Yeah. Hopefully making sure that they can then see something early, react much more quickly than they would normally, and then make an effective change, which doesn't require a significant delay. So then the customer's service level agreement doesn't get impacted and they're not paying penalties. That's the ultimate idea.
Yeah.
So you catch it as early as you can, get a root cause as early as you can, then drive the change to the network as efficiently. Using AI can really help that whole process.
Yeah. And are you seeing any type of use cases around kind of the proactive assurance space where you're able to not just fix with a root cause analysis, but you're able to predict and solve something before it becomes an issue?
I think there's early cases of that for sure. I think it's based on traffic pattern and demand, but we're finding obviously some of those traffic patterns don't have the same look as we start going into the near future. So there is a little bit of it. It's a question of how mature those models are getting. We've done some in the past where we've been able to look at optical parameters and predict potential failures up front. The challenge is making sure that the operations team can handle those predictions on top of handling the emergencies there.
Sure.
And that's really where it is if you overload the operations teams that aren't actually a problem yet, they're always going to prioritize the current problem.
Sure.
So giving them an actual way of dealing with those predictions without adding more workload is really the important part.
Absolutely.
So we focused on how we help them make the effective change without necessarily burying the ops team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, Blue Planet is very in touch with the network engineers that are dealing with the problems and operations on a day to day.
Yes.
So anything that we can do from an AI standpoint to help alleviate their day to day, free them up to focus on higher priority things, that really is the win for both of us.
Absolutely. Yes.
Great. Peter, let's talk out in the future. We're on this journey towards autonomous networking. Maybe next 3 years, what do you see CSPs focusing on?
Well, I think there's lots of things that are going to change. I think if we look at how operators work, I think the biggest change we're going to see is today, I think nearly all of them drive their operations teams using sets of dashboards and reports. They're 3 years' time, I think the number of those is going to really heavily collapse. What we're going to have is people having conversations with an intelligence layer that then tells them what's happening in their network.
Sure.
And then to be able to find something out new, you're not asking someone to devise a new dashboard, a new report that takes time. You're having a much more direct conversation with all of the intelligence you've got within your network to get an understanding of something completely new you've never thought of before.
Sure.
So it's that compression of that cycle time between what's happening and how do I investigate it. Yeah. Today, that's a very quite IT intensive because you're using a lot of different skills to pull data and manipulate it. Yeah. I think that's just going to completely melt away. You'll end up with a conversational sort of response. You might visualize that.
Sure.
But that's going to be one of the areas I think will be significantly different. So you won't go into a network operator and see 75 screens on the wall anymore.
Right.
In the same way as you used to, you'll end up with a completely different way. They'll still have a dashboard.
Sure.
But how they actually operate will be significantly.
Yeah. Try to eliminate some of that old swivel chair operations, exactly. All the different screens, all the different platforms.
Don't need to go and ask 5 questions to 5 different systems. You ask it once, it goes and finds it out, collates it, gives you the consolidated summary, and then helps you understand the next step.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. And what I'm hearing from that, in order for that to be a possibility, sounds like a common data fabric, ontology. It's got to be the key to that.
And I think one of the biggest misconceptions today is that everyone thinks that they've got all the data they need. And most people have more data than they need. Mm-hmm. But the problem is it doesn't have context and it's not structured for use.
Right.
And so without those components, then it really is difficult to try and automate anything or apply any AI to it. So that's the biggest hurdle that they're starting to understand is their data lakes or their data repositories they have are either incomplete or that they're not necessarily tuned to be consumed by an AI type algorithm.
Yeah, absolutely. Gotta collect, ingest, but then also normalize the data so it is actionable by AI.
Yeah, and just give it the context of what does it mean.
Sure.
You know, we take completely for granted some of the normal things that would happen between looking at a device and saying, oh, well, that's this type of port, and therefore you should have these properties. Yep. That's not inherently within the data that's collected. So that intelligence needs to be put on top of the data so you can actually make those correlations.
Absolutely. Yeah. Bringing in that OSS native expertise in order to make sense of the data.
Yeah.
Really is how we're going to empower the AI to act the way that we want to.
Exactly. And that's really where we're focused on bringing the intelligence into our agents so that we can do that in a seamless way for our customers.
Yeah. Great. Awesome. Well, thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much.